Well, hey everybody, it's Sandy and welcome back to my channel dedicated to helping you advocate for your own health one topic at a time. So guys, today I want to talk a little more about that Pfizer booster. Yeah, it seems like every minute there's more news, right? I could do a video every day on this, but it seems like there's just such good news that's come out now about the Pfizer booster that I want to talk about it a little more. Yeah, so first of all, I want to say thank you and welcome. So I just crossed 3,500 subscribers. Not that it's about the numbers, and really as it goes, like as YouTube partners go, I guess that's small, but I'm new and growing. I hope I'm growing. So I thank you so much for those of you who have found my channel recently and subscribed, and thank you to those people who have been with me a while. We'll give a plug to the Sandy's DIY Health Advocacy Facebook groups page. I've been remembering to say that the last few videos. So if you want to have more of an interactive discussion with people who frequent this channel, that might be a good group for you to join. So head on over to Facebook. And so I talked recently about boosters, and by the way, yeah, that was a shaky video, and all your criticisms and comments very well taken. And I am going to get a phone stand so that I can continue using the phone some. I'm back to using the computer right now because I don't have the phone stand yet. And yeah, I'm sorry if I made anybody nauseated with all the shaking of the camera there. So you guys might remember back when we first started talking about booster shots, and it was several months ago, and they were already starting to administer it in Israel. I think it was like July. And I had said at the time that, I don't know that I really buy that we need booster shots. I think there's so many confounding variables. Like in Israel, they had found that the people who had been vaccinated first were the ones who were breaking through, but then those were also people who were elderly, but then the current infections were all Delta variant. And so maybe this was about the Delta variant. And it was just really impossible at that time to untangle all those variables. Well, there was a study that came out of Kaiser Permanente just recently that did disentangle those things. And what they found is that the decrease in effectiveness of the Pfizer vaccine had everything to do with waning immunity and really nothing to do with Delta. So it's not that Delta can evade that vaccine. I think that is such good news for people who got Pfizer and were wondering, what should I do? Should I cross over to Moderna or something like that? I'm going to talk more about that in just a moment, but I just thought that was great news. It had to do with a period of time over which the effectiveness of the vaccine wanes, regardless of the variant. There's one study out of Kaiser Permanente, the be-all, end-all, no, but I think the important thing is that the results of that study seem to mirror the results of the larger cohort study in Israel, the Pfizer study, and I think that when more than one study is coming out looking at the same thing and they kind of agree with each other, I think that gives a great deal of confidence that we're kind of heading in the right direction, as opposed to, some of you might recall over the summer that Israel came out with some data on Pfizer and the UK came out with some data on Pfizer, and it was like grossly mismatched, and it was just hard to make sense of any of it and which was right, which was wrong. Is the answer somewhere in between? So I just thought that this Kaiser study coming out was just such encouraging news. Now, what they looked at is the immunity after the first two-part series. So forget the booster. They were looking at the difference in immunity with the Delta variant. I guess that means they were looking at people who were more recently vaccinated with their initial series with Pfizer. What they found was that the Pfizer vaccine was 93% effective for up to the following month. So after the first month, that began to wane, and that's the first month after the two-part series. And after 4 months, it went down to 53% effective. And that's really what was comparable to the larger cohort in Israel. Now, interestingly, and more good news, is that the effectiveness against hospitalization or severe disease, death, didn't really change. That was about 93% for up to 6 months. And I think that's going to weigh on the upcoming recommendations. So right now, that booster shot with Pfizer is only approved and recommended in certain groups of people. I'm hoping that we quickly see a broadening of those recommendations so that anybody who got Pfizer will be eligible after at least 6 months past their second shot in their initial two-part series. Let's go back to where I said 93% effective against severe disease or hospitalization. So that still leaves 7%. The small minority of patients who were admitted to a hospital with severe COVID after having had Pfizer, regardless of the length of time, of course, we're limited by how long it's been around, but that was limited to patients who were mostly advanced age and had comorbidities. I think another piece of good news here is that I think it can really put people's minds at ease. When I did my earlier video, I guess about a week ago or so, about the Pfizer booster being approved in certain populations, I had a lot of people contact me and say, do you think I should switch over to Moderna? So, by the way, I don't give any individual medical advice on this channel, and there's nothing that I say that should be deemed appropriate substitute for the advice of your own qualified practitioner. So don't have to go ahead and ask me that. I do think these are all good questions to ask your own practitioner, but I think that can put a lot of people's minds at ease, because that's always a little bit of a scary thing, right? To cross over into an area where there's no good data. Now, we all know of some people anecdotally who have crossed over and had Pfizer full series and then decided 6 months after their second shot or so to go ahead and get Moderna. How people are doing that is another story. I've read articles about that, but it's still largely unstudied, and even a small anecdotal handful of people, including even people who were written up about in a widely accepted publication, I still think that's scary territory, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen later. Well, what happens when it is time for a boost? Or what happens if, who knows, you're going to go travel, and because you had one at one time and a different one for a boost, the boost isn't recognized. I could just see all kinds of problems with crossing over, and you're not even getting a different platform, right? Because they're both messenger RNA vaccines. I just think that this can help a whole lot put people's minds at ease, because I think that the people who were the most concerned about Pfizer and staying with Pfizer because they had Pfizer and now it's time, maybe they're eligible for the boost, or maybe they're thinking soon they'll be eligible for the boost, their biggest concern was Delta. And I think that between this Kaiser study and then the larger Israeli study, I think that can really put your mind at ease. And if that's all true, then yes, it turns out the Israelis were right about it again all along. I'm glad that they've gotten their population largely boosted. They certainly have the booster available for just about everybody now in their population, because they're all Pfizer over there. Now, what are the implications with Moderna? So at this point, Moderna is seeking an authorization for its booster. So it does seem that Moderna is lasting a little longer than Pfizer. Does that have to do with the fact that Moderna was a higher dose all along? Yeah, I would think so, probably. I also think that's the reason that we found more reactogenicity with Moderna. Now, I got shot down a little bit when I was talking with people months and months ago, because everything was kind of anecdotal at that time, and I had thought that it seemed that we were seeing more reactogenicity with people who got Moderna. That doesn't mean we didn't see any with Pfizer, but certainly there is some. But it seemed to me that there was more with Moderna. And just recently, somebody actually posted something in the Facebook group. It was a publication showing reactogenicity, various side effects. It was broken down by which side effects across which vaccine, and it just compared Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J. And it was basically a bar graph, so you could eyeball it. And sure enough, the most reactogenicity is associated with Moderna. That makes sense because it's the higher dose. And I think that's probably part of the reason, at least, that they've decided that they want to use half the dose for the boost. It's probably just as effective, and maybe they're hoping to cut down on some of that reactogenicity. Now, I kind of have my own little pilot study going, so to speak. So back when I got the Moderna series, my first dose was in January, my second dose was in February, both in the beginning. So beginning of January, beginning of February. Now I remember that I got vaccinated at the same time as several of my colleagues and cohorts over at one facility where I don't work anymore, but I'm still in the loop a little bit over there. And we all went to, there was a hospital that was offering the vaccines for healthcare workers who were non-hospital based. We all went over there. We all got vaccinated with Moderna within like a few days of each other. It was certainly less than a week. And that group I'm sort of watching, and only in the last month has seen some breakthrough cases in that group I'm hearing, but extremely mild. This is, of course, is not a study. It's a very non-scientific way to measure any of this, but I do think that we're going to see coming out shortly, as the FDA is looking at the Moderna boosters, we're going to see more and more data. And it does seem like, from what I've read already, that it's taking a little bit longer to see that breakthrough. So I think that Moderna having that higher dose originally maybe bought people more time. I just think this is such good news for everybody all the way around, that between the Israeli study and the study that came out of Kaiser, I just think that it means we can all just sort of take a deep breath. Now, the next obvious question is going to be, well, do we need to do this every 6 months? I don't know, but I kind of doubt it. I think that more boosting is probably going to create more longevity of the shot. So hopefully, let's say we'll find out that this is really a 3-part series that has to be given at day 1, day 21, and then 6 months later, and who knows, maybe that's going to be good for a very long time. So that's going to be something we have to continue to watch. Unfortunately, we have this ongoing study coming out of Israel with some massive amount of data that's only getting larger, and that's all Pfizer. So that will be really helpful. But I don't think I'd worry too much that because we needed this at 6 months after the second shot, that therefore we're going to need this every 6 months. I don't think that's true. And I think that you can take a great deal of solace in the fact that the protection against severe disease, hospitalization, and the like is still not waning even up to the 6 month mark. So if you're not eligible yet for booster, just stay tuned, keep up with your other mitigation measures. I am optimistic at this point that this is going to shake out the way it should. So yeah, anyway, that's my short and sweet addition. It's how often can you just get on here these days, talk about COVID and say, wow, there's such great news. There's also this new drug that looks like it can knock down the risk of hospitalization and death by 50%. And I heard Scott Gottlieb, who is one of the people I very much admire. I listen to just everything he has to say, and I find myself awed by what a great bird's eye view he has of the whole process, and I think that's largely because of his background. He says that he's optimistic that it will actually protect a great deal more than that because we haven't even used it yet as a preventive, as an early intervention with people who are not high risk, and certainly that's not going to be an option right away because there will be an issue with supply when this first comes out. It'll probably have to be rationed, and it'll probably have to be relegated to people who are the most at risk, but this is an oral drug. It's not like a vaccine. This should be able to get ramped up really pretty quickly. Merck will just partner with manufacturers and they'll start ramping up the supply. And I think that that is going to be a game changer. I think more therapeutics is always a good thing. I know I kind of criticized, and I still do, the concept that in this country, every disease needs its own brand new drug. That's, of course, going to be expensive and patented. But I still do think that therapeutics are really going to be the key because we're not going to knock this thing out completely, just like the flu. So I am so happy about this. I sort of see this between this Pfizer information and this Merck information coming out. I can just sort of see on the horizon a shift from pandemic to endemic. I mean, yeah, I would have liked if we could have made this thing go away. That boat sailed. So I will welcome the shift from pandemic to endemic to something that we have under control, that we can cope with, that we have any number of tools in the toolbox. And yeah, so for those of you who got Pfizer and who are eligible for your booster shots already, congratulations. I hope you'll go get them. For the rest of you, congratulations on all this good news coming out about Pfizer. It is just so satisfying to hear it. At least for me, it was so satisfying to read all this. And yeah, so let me know if this pertains to you. Let me know how it affects you. And until next time, be well. Bye-bye.